Humanity marked a milestone recently when the global population hit 8 billion. But the presence of ever more people on Earth is a strain on nature as communities compete with wildlife for food, water, and space. Today, we consider the advantages of conserving animal habitats and the dangers we face if we don't. Hello and welcome to Eco India. I'm Sanuta Raghu. Every day, there are fewer places left for wildlife to call home, even in places where they're emblematic of a whole region. Take the northern Indian state of Uttar Pradesh. For years, its official bird, the Saras crane, has been under intense pressure. Now, an extensive outreach program that's put wetland conservation front and center with the local farming community is seeing population numbers take off.
It's 6 a.m. on a Monday morning, and farmers Nasiruddin Ali and Chedi are looking for nesting Saras cranes. They are part of a conservation organization and have been working to protect the crane population for over 10 years. Saras cranes are the only resident breeding cranes in India and the world's tallest flying bird.
I get a torch in the night to check on the nests and eggs. I protect them and make sure nobody harms these birds or tries to kill them. I take care of the eggs and nests so the birds are safe. I like their presence here.
Such sightings used to be rare, even here in Uttar Pradesh, which is home to nearly 70% of India's Saras cranes. Until a decade ago, if farmers saw the birds on their farmland, they would shoo them away, take their eggs, or even kill them.
I explained to other farmers that this is our state bird. They don't cause us any harm. They don't eat much, just a little to feed themselves, but it's no major loss to us. Let them live in the wetlands and coexist.
The red-headed Saras crane, which is over 150 centimeters tall on average, usually nests in natural inland wetlands or in paddy fields, where the tall rice crop ensures that its eggs remain protected. Using straws and grass from their surroundings, the birds build big nests that can be 2 meters wide. It's one reason why they are unpopular with farmers, who worry their crop will be destroyed. The conflict helps explain why the Saras crane is categorized as vulnerable on the International Union for Conservation of Nature's list of threatened species. According to the WWF, there are now only 15 to 20,000 Saras cranes in India today.
Some of the biggest threats for Saras cranes, therefore, not surprisingly, are because of the way in which human beings are using the landscape and how they change the use of the landscape. So in Madhya Pradesh, for example, when rice and wheat was replaced by the cash crop soybean, we see that the number of cranes that exist in that entire state, in the area that is cultivable, has reduced quite a lot.
The crane's preferred habitat is wetlands. Uttar Pradesh is home to some 2,200 square kilometers of wetlands, an area twice the size of Hong Kong. But now some of these valuable ecosystems are being destroyed to make way for soy fields. According to the non-profit Wetlands International, India has lost 1/3 of its natural wetlands over the last 4 decades. And if wetlands disappear, the cranes will too. Arshad Hussain from the Wildlife Trust of India points out another problem: garbage.
The problem is that this wetland was in its natural state a few years ago, but in the meantime it has been leased. The leaser has converted the wetland into smaller ponds, as you see.
Several years ago, the Wildlife Trust of India launched a special conservation project to protect the crane's habitat. One of the aims of the project is to register unprotected wetlands as per the Wetlands Conservation and Management Rules in order to protect them from exploitation. So far, the project has registered 37 of the 51 identified wetlands in the region. Meanwhile, a group of more than 150 volunteers act as Saras Mitras or Friends of the Saras, including Chedi and Nasiruddin Ali. The local community has also invested in protecting the bird and its habitats as part of a statewide project.
एग्रीकल्चर के लिए वो एक
Saras cranes are an indicator of agriculture. If there are Saras cranes, it means there's water or wetlands. And if there's water, then it's a rich area. So it's an indicator of agriculture. So we convinced the local community to join us, and they did.
आज वो हमारा रिजल्ट है.
Since 2013, more than 20,000 farmer volunteers across 10 districts of Uttar Pradesh have joined the project. They meet up regularly to monitor water quality in the wetlands using testing kits. They check the pH, temperature, oxygen levels, chlorine, ammonia, fluoride, phosphorus, and hardness. Badar Sahani joined the wetlands projects 8 years ago and has witnessed a change not just in human behavior but also in the cranes.
The Saras cranes aren't threatened here anymore. They're still at risk from cheetahs and jackals, but not from humans.
Since the first census in 2013, when 600 Saras cranes were counted in eastern Uttar Pradesh, a region where conservation efforts are still a relatively new development, the population has more than quadrupled. The Saras crane has also adapted.
So the evidence seems to suggest that the cranes have learned to figure out that their territory does not have enough food for two birds to feed the chicks, and so they need a third bird as a helper.
Its adapted behavior attests to the resilience of the bird. And thanks to the efforts of a growing number of dedicated volunteers, perhaps it won't be long before the calls of the Saras crane will be heard more often.
The freshwater pearl mussel is a globally endangered species. Prized for their delicate gems, populations have been decimated by hunters, agriculture and water pollution. Conservationists in Germany are working to boost their numbers. And as this next report from southern Bavaria shows, that can involve some pretty heavy machinery.
Restoring this stream near Passau in southern Germany requires a 20-ton excavator with 150 horsepower. The Zentinger stream runs through meadows before eventually feeding into the Danube, one of the longest rivers in Germany. Biologist Marco Denich has been working in the region for several years. Many of Bavaria's waterways are badly degraded.
Also hier haben wir jetzt einen Gewässerabschnitt, der
This stretch of water has no structural variation. You can see that its depth doesn't vary. The water flows at a uniform speed, and the bed consists of only sand and small pebbles. There aren't any larger stones or boulders. Basically, there aren't any naturally occurring structures in the stream that provide variety and help stabilize the bed.
For decades, streams like this one were adjusted to suit agricultural needs. For example, by making sure the water flowed faster to make it easier to drain meadows and farmland in wet weather.
This sort of situation is not good for wildlife because a lack of structural diversity in nature leaves wildlife with less scope to find a suitable habitat.
The excavator is helping to reintroduce that structural diversity, distributing boulders, stones and tree roots and levelling the banks.
You get some ideal habitats when the material that's been reintroduced gets mixed with the finer pebbles and big rocks, like this, that protect against stronger currents.
Now and then, nature itself gives the restoration efforts an unexpected boost.
This is a beaver dam. We're obviously not the only ones trying to reshape the stream.
Aquatic plants, insects, fish, crayfish, they've all returned to this stream, which was restored several years ago. But according to Marko Denic, there's still no sign of any freshwater pearl mussels. It's an endangered species and nearly extinct due to harvesting and pollution. The mussels play a key role in the ecosystem because they help purify the water. They filter out tiny organic particles from the water they take in. This benefits other species, big and small, that also inhabit the waters, a perfect food chain. Germany's streams were once home to thriving freshwater pearl mussel populations.
Man sieht hier sehr schön
You can see the difference in size between a mussel that's at least 50 years old and a young one that's about 8 years old from a breeding project. In recent years, they've both made their home here in the area.
seit einigen Jahren ihr Zuhause gefunden haben.
Captive breeding programs are currently the best way of boosting freshwater pearl mussel populations, since most river habitats are too degraded. Conditions in the breeding stations are ideal, and the mussel can flourish.
Der Trick ist, den Lebenszyklus
The trick
von
in
der
the breeding
Fußballmuschel,
program
der
is to replicate the life cycle of the river pearl mussel, which is a bit complicated. We keep mature mussels and wait for them to release their larvae into the water. The water in the crate then flows into the container with the host fish, the brook trout.
Das läuft dann rüber zu dem Behälter mit den Wirtsfischen, mit den Bachforellen.
Hundreds of brook trout live in the tanks, and they need the mussels to successfully complete their reproduction cycle. These settle in their gills for about 9 months before falling off. They're not yet ready to be released into the wild. They spend the next few years in boxes with water flowing through them in a stream next to the breeding station and are regularly monitored.
Die haben sich sehr gut entwickelt.
These have developed well.
Das sind jetzt
We'll be releasing them quite
Exemplare,
soon.
die wir demnächst dann
Most
aussetzen.
important is their shell
Die
length.
Schalenlänge
They should
sollte
be
so
about
1,5
1.5 to 2 centimeters long, because then they've survived the critical juvenile stage, which they spend in the crevices in the gravel, and can then cope well with the conditions in the water.
Bedingungen im Gewässer schon ganz gut zurecht.
But before that can happen, more streams need to be restored. And then mussel beds can play their part in repairing the ecosystem.
Staying underwater and to an invisible problem that severely impacts wildlife in all of our oceans, underwater noise. Ever since the Industrial Revolution, human activity in and around marine environments has bombarded the seas with sound. As we discovered, the effect on creatures, large and small, is disorienting and destructive.
The ocean is a symphony of sounds, at least where they can still be heard. We humans have made the sea noisier than ever before. And the way things are going, the underwater world is set to become one thing. Even louder, with devastating effects on marine life.
From feeding to predator avoidance, sensing their environment, food finding, reproduction, the whole thing.
Let's explore some smart ways of turning down the volume in the ocean and find out why this might also be good for the climate. Underwater sound waves travel extremely fast and up to thousands of kilometers. Sound is essential for almost all marine animals, from whales to jellyfish. Animals use sound to communicate, to navigate, and to find mating partners or prey. But hearing what those creatures need to hear is getting increasingly difficult. Some marine life is currently exposed to noise levels that can destroy their sense of hearing, literally render them deaf or kill them.
It's like you're walking around in a fog. That's a pretty serious effect too for animals that depend on sound so much.
So why are the oceans becoming so noisy? One factor is offshore wind farms, and wind energy is generally a good thing. But installing offshore turbines creates a great deal of noise. In the North Sea, it damaged the hearing of porpoises, driving them away from their feeding and breeding grounds.
Then the foundations are most likely big steel piles, and they have to drive into the seabed by hammering or impact pile driving. And this caused underwater noise, which is more or less comparable as in starting aircraft.
The sounds emitted by the pile structural elements smashing into the sea floor travel several kilometers from the source. But help is on the way. Compressed air flowing through tubes on the ocean floor around the piles creates bubbles that rise to the surface, forming a tight insulation curtain. Fewer sound waves manage to penetrate the barrier, leading to a 90% reduction in volume. This is how things sound without an air bubble curtain. And this is with an air bubble curtain.
The challenging issue is that you have to live with the offshore conditions, wind, waves, weather conditions, currents, and so on.
But thanks to tighter regulations, the curtains are now almost standard for construction off Germany's North Sea coast. And interest is also picking up in the US, the Netherlands, and Taiwan. Implementing bubble curtains costs just 1% or less of the total investment for an offshore wind farm.
Turn the music louder, we are going in.
So wind turbines are one thing, but there's a bigger problem: container ships. International shipping is by far the main source of noise pollution in our oceans. The culprit and the potential solution is the ship's propeller. Domestic pressure cookers work by controlling the steam pressure inside them, pushing up the temperature at which water boils. The resulting higher heat means faster cooking. On a ship's propeller, the opposite happens, not with food but with water, an effect called cavitation.
So due to the fast motion of that propeller through the water, locally the pressure is extremely low, so that at ambient temperature the water boils and creates bubbles, creates vapor bubbles, and these bubbles grow and these bubbles shrink and collapse.
This generates noise levels comparable to a rock concert on dry land. The solution has the potential to be good news for the climate and the profit margins of big shipping companies. Essentially, fewer bubbles can mean lower fuel consumption. In 2017, Denmark-based Maersk retrofitted the propellers and engines of 5 vessels, primarily to save fuel. But their sound emissions also dropped by 75%. This add-on device improves a vessel's flow in the water, which, according to its maker, means less cavitation and fuel savings of up to 8%. But installation isn't cheap, and shipping firms are rarely obliged to make the changes. With cargo prices currently very high, they prefer to keep ships in operation rather than investing in a retrofit.
For many ships, there could be savings possible, especially due to the fact that each ship needs to go to dry docking each 4 to 5 years.
To incentivize ship operators, the Port of Vancouver has cut port charges for certified quieter vessels by as much as half. But the loudest offenders are seismic air guns. The fossil fuel industry uses them to locate new oil and gas fields in the ocean. Their sound waves are as loud as a spacecraft and can be heard hundreds of kilometers from the source. For days, sometimes even weeks or months, these tubes fire out compressed air every 10 seconds. With every blast, 2/3 of all zooplankton larvae within a kilometer of the explosion drop dead. They ensure the health of the ecosystem.
Air guns are incredibly wasteful. They're way too loud for what they need to do.
Ironically, the fossil fuel industry is itself conducting research on more environmentally friendly methods for its surveys. One technique is called marine vibrasize, which generates the required signals via vibration instead of an explosion. The result is more of a constant hum rather than a big sudden blast.
An air gun is so strong it could rip your arm off. Whereas a vibrosize on land, you can put an egg underneath it and it won't break.
Initial models suggest that the impact on marine life would be just 10% of that of an air gun. The likes of ExxonMobil, Total Energies, and Shell may have their eye on another advantage, however. Marine vibrosize can also map oil and gas in shallow waters. But doesn't this sound paradoxical? More sustainable methods to find more fossil fuels?
We really should not be, we just should not be searching for oil and gas under the ocean anymore. We really need to make this green transition. That's the main solution.
There are plenty of options for reducing marine noise pollution, but more progress is needed on the regulatory front. In 2011, Germany introduced one of the world's first noise limits in place to protect North Sea marine life. Air bubble curtains are now standard there, and the industry is doing fine. Taiwan is introducing a similar regulation. Quieter is better for the environment, but without incentives or new laws, the industry has few reasons to change.
The role of zoos in conservation is controversial, but some argue they play a valuable role in educating the public about animals and help foster awareness about the need to protect species. We met a zoo education officer in Chennai who is committed to doing just that.
Caesar, the green iguana, savors a refreshing splash of cool water. A newborn gavial calls for its mother. And crocodile Thor gobbles up a chicken. The Madras Crocodile Bank's Facebook page allows web users to get up close and personal with all these animals. The reptile zoo in the southern Indian state of Tamil Nadu hopes seeing them online will encourage visitors to drop by in person and learn more.
When people come to the zoo, we educate them about the animals, how these animals live and eat. We give this information to the people.
The zoo was founded in 1976, a time when crocodiles had almost gone extinct in India due to the trade in crocodile leather. The government placed certain species under protection. The Madras Crocodile Bank was designed to help revive numbers with a breeding program. At the beginning, the zoo housed exclusively crocodiles. Nowadays, it's home to many other reptiles too, like turtles, iguanas, and snakes. It's snakes that people are particularly scared of. They are deemed to be dangerous. Steffi John works closely with all these animals.
It's not like they do not bite. If they bite, we have to endure it. Animals cannot talk, and biting is how they express themselves.
That's why snakes play a big role in Steffi John's educational work. She wants people to understand them.
In India, every year 50,000 to 60,000 people die because of snake bites. Hence, it is very important to spread awareness about snakes.
Steffi John received a BA in zoology in Tamil Nadu. Afterwards, she did a master's in biology and conservation in Scotland. She was recently elected to represent South Asia in the International Zoo Educators Association, a role which puts her in dialogue with zoos worldwide.
As a zoo educator, my main ambition and goal is to create a change in people's perspectives about animals. The zoo exists because of that, so that people will get curious about animals and get to learn more about them. They will also learn about how to build a better future where people and animals can coexist harmoniously. They can also learn about the importance of animals. Humans and animals are dependent on each other. The goal of a zoo is to make people understand how we can both coexist.
The pandemic lockdown presented the zoo and its employees with many challenges. With visitors forced to stay home, the zoo lacked income, but that obstacle helped it innovate. Now companies and individuals can adopt animals and help finance their keep. The zoo's social media presence helps it to find suitable sponsors and ensure the protection of endangered reptile species into the future.
Our planet thrives on balance. As we've seen today, the Earth belongs to every living organism, not just human beings. The more we embody this, the more we ensure the security of our own species. Think about that, and I'll see you again next week. From all of us in India and Germany, goodbye and thanks for watching.